today we're going to dive into a blueprint for a totally different kind of technology. I mean, what happens when you build a digital platform not just on code, but on a really deep ethical vision? Let's break it all down.
All right, here's the game plan. We're going to start with the nuts and bolts, the tech itself. Then we'll look at the rules of the road for the community. After that, we'll zoom way out to the philosophical why behind it all. And finally, we'll see how it all comes together to create, well, tech with a soul.
But let's just pause on the one question that really drives this entire project. What if the code we write, the platforms we build, could actually have a conscience? You know, an ethical purpose baked right into its DNA.
All right, first up, the what. We've got to look at the actual technical architecture. Because, hey, before you can have a soul, you need a body, right?
So, you know how most platforms are built like this one giant, clunky block? This is the exact opposite. It uses what's called a microservices architecture. Seriously, just think of it like a massive box of digital Legos. Each little piece is its own independent service. This makes the whole system incredibly flexible, super resilient. I mean, if one Lego brick falls off, the whole castle doesn't collapse. And way, way easier to update.
And check out how it handles data. This is really smart. It uses something called polyglot persistence. It's a fancy term, but it just means using the right tool for the right job. So for the super important stuff like legal agreements, it uses a rock-solid, structured database. But for all the creative files, the art, the metadata, it uses more flexible, decentralized tools. This choice is a perfect reflection of the mission, a stable business foundation to support a free-flowing, creative community. Okay, so the tech is solid, but how do you govern this thing? A platform isn't just ones and zeros. It's a community of actual people, and every community needs some rules.
At its absolute core, the whole system is a legal co-op built on mutualism. And that just means it's democratic. One member, one vote. It doesn't matter if you got $1 million in the game or 10. Your voice has the same weight when it comes to the big decisions. That's the bedrock. Now, layered on top of that democratic foundation is a utilitarian growth engine. This part is all about the greatest good for the greatest number. It uses incentives, things like tokens or reputation scores, to reward people for doing things that help the entire community grow and thrive.
And the final layer? That's a set of hard, unbreakable rules, a deontological security system. This is where smart contracts are key. Just think of them as little digital robot lawyers that work 24/7. They automatically enforce the things that are completely non-negotiable, like making sure every single artist on a project gets paid their fair share on time every time.
But here's the catch, right? None of these philosophies are perfect on their own. If you go pure utilitarian, you risk the tyranny of the majority. If you go pure deontology with just hard rules, the system could become way too rigid and unable to change. Each one has its trade-offs. And that is exactly why this platform doesn't just pick one. It's a hybrid model that blends the best of all three. You get the fairness and equity from the mutualist core, the smart growth from the utilitarian engine, and the unbreakable security from the deontological layer. It's like a three-legged stool, incredibly stable and built to last.
All right, so we've covered the tech and the rules. Now we're going to zoom way, way out to the deepest layer of this whole thing, the why. This is the philosophical vision that gives this entire project its heart and soul.
This whole vision is built around an archetype called the sovereign steward, and it's basically a fusion of two really powerful ideas. On one side, you have the spirit of the tribe of Dan, which stands for external protection, looking out for the community, being the rear guard, making sure absolutely no one gets left behind. And on the other side, you have the Thomasine Jesus, representing gnosis, that deep, inner, experiential wisdom, the idea that the kingdom is within you.
So what happens when you smash those two ideas together? Inner wisdom and outer protection. You get this powerful mandate called embodied gnosis. The core idea here is that true wisdom can't just be a thought or a feeling. It has to be brought out into the world. It has to become real, tangible, protective action.
And this ancient saying, this is pretty much the philosophical engine for the whole initiative. It frames this kind of action not as a nice to have, but as an absolute necessity for survival. It's basically saying, hey, that light inside you, you have to let it out. Because if you don't, it'll destroy you from the inside. It's powerful stuff. So let's bring it all home. How does this incredibly deep purpose actually change the technology? How does it show up in the ones and zeros and the features of the platform?
Well, that philosophy of the sovereign steward isn't just some nice idea on a poster. It gets translated directly into three core values that guide every single design decision: radical mutual recognition, shared abundance, and regenerative action. And here's a perfect example of how that works. Remember those smart contracts, the robot lawyers? They're not just a neutral tool. When you use them to automatically and fairly pay royalties to creators, they become an act of regenerative action. They are literally healing a broken and exploitative system with code. Okay, but even with all these great values, there's still a classic problem with any democratic system. How do you stop a handful of really powerful members from just running the show and drowning out everyone else? Well, the solution here is a really elegant mechanism called quadratic voting. The way it works is the more votes you cast for the same option, the more expensive each additional vote becomes. It's a mathematical way to level the playing field, making it much harder for a few whales to dominate and amplifying the voices of passionate minorities. And that really gets to the heart of it all. This isn't just a clever way to count votes. This is about consciously using technology to embed an ethical principle, radical mutual recognition, deep into the platform's DNA. It's about building a system where every single voice is heard and respected. And that kind of leaves us with one final big question. When we intentionally build technology to serve a deep ethical purpose, when we give it a soul, its potential just completely transforms. It makes you wonder, right? Can our digital worlds do more than just reflect the one we already have? Can they actually help us build a better one?